Hello everybody and welcome to Arganian's Puzzle Box. In today's tutorial we'll be exploring how to make a black hole in Unreal Engine 5. This can be done in Unreal Engine 4 as well, but I'm choosing to do it in Unreal Engine 5. Doesn't really matter. Now the important thing to understand here is this is not just a tutorial on how to make a black hole, this is also a tutorial on how to set up material parameters that then work in blueprints that you can access and change via blueprints themselves. So it's really a good tutorial for beginners but also intermediate people who have not had a lot to do with blueprints as of yet. If you want to get the project files for everything that I do, and also a spaceship, a planet with atmosphere and rings, and the black hole itself, you can head over to Gumroad or ArtStation to get the project, or you can also go on Patreon, become a Patreon supporter, and you can have the project from there, as well with many other projects that I have available. So for the price of a coffee, you will be getting a full-fledged black hole and a space scene in which you can actually use it. On top of that, you're basically learning as you go through this tutorial. You'll be learning how to put together materials, how to put together a C++ code, which is also it will be linked or copied in the description below of YouTube. So just make sure you get that, because without it you won't be able to run this to make this material. Once you have that code, once you watch the tutorial on how to put it together, you will be able to have a fully functioning black hole that you can then modify and get different results with. So let's not delay it any longer, and let's begin breaking down my initial scene so we can understand how it all functions and how we're going to put it together. Okay guys, so we are within the black hole project, and this is the black hole. As you can see, it is contained as a sphere in a blueprint. There's a planet over here as well. There's some rings around the planet with an atmosphere. If I press play, I will be able to fly a ship, as you're seeing right now, which is the Black Millennium Falcon, flying towards the black hole. So I think that looks pretty cinematic, pretty nice. Okay, now the black hole itself is a blueprint, right? And we're gonna set it up that way. And I'm going to show you how you can have all of these settings here for the blueprint to be exposed, so you can change everything that you want about this black hole. One of the first setting is the black hole size. By increasing this, you're effectively making the black hole itself and the accretion disk, you're increasing its size or decreasing it. And this is a very large blueprint. As you can see, the scale of the blueprint is really high, and the black hole size, if you increase that too much, it will get out of bounds of the sphere, and the black hole will not be able to go past those bounds. So if you want to increase it even further, you have to increase the size of the sphere. So let's say we put this at the size 2, so now it's a massive sphere. So the black hole can just become gargantuan, as you can see. Well, it was already very, very, very large as it was, but that's what that setting does. The next one is a setting about color. So it just changes the color of the black hole. Again, we're going to learn how to do this. So you can make all sorts of different crazy colors if you want to. Obviously pink is not exactly something that I want, but whatever floats your boat. Let me just try and make a bit of a red tint there, like that. The next thing is the emission intensity. So that just increases the power of the light emitted by the black hole, and that's a really nice setting as well. Then you've got the ring speed, the rotation speed of these rings that you're seeing, and you can also stretch their texture, so you can make them like a soup, or you can just really decrease it and make it more like a grain. So if you really put it down, this becomes very grainy now as well. Then you've got the Doppler intensity, and as you can see, the more you increase it, it creates this sort of shine where the hole meets where the event horizon basically is, sort of thing. And then I've got the event horizon size, and this pretty much increases the size of the hole itself. If we go further down, you can see what I'm talking about. And this just is really nice that you can just do that and have different size shaped black holes. And by the way, you can have multiple black holes within the scene, and as you can see, they're quite performant as well. I mean, I'm not really getting a lot of hits here for something like this. The next thing that we've got, and this effect, is the lensing which will be part of the, if you look in the blueprint, we've got an outer static mesh and a black hole. And each of these are just some spheres. You can just use any spheres for that. But what we're doing here, if I press Alt 3 on the keyboard, this will allow us to see the entire thing unlit. So if I start changing these settings, you can see how it's affecting, is distorting the area around the black hole. But once you go into lit mode, the black hole itself has not been distorted, but you can see the space around it has it. I'm not sure if YouTube allows you to be able to see this properly, but you can see how the how the space around the black hole distorts as we play around with this setting, which I find really, really awesome as well. So I'm going to show you how to put all of that together. Again, if you want to get the project files for this, you got everything in there already up and running. You've got the ship with flight controls, you've got the black hole itself, you've got the planet with rings and an atmosphere that you can just play around with. And you can get it off ArtStation, Gumroad, or Patreon. If you want to support me for the price of a coffee, you're basically getting all of this. If not, just stick with the tutorial and you'll learn how to make this black hole yourself. So let's not waste any more time on breaking down the scene, and let's just begin. Now I want to just go into just make a new level. I've got a default level in here, and I'm just gonna play with my black hole within this level. There's no point in going somewhere else. Let me just decrease the speed at which we're moving. We're gonna have a fairly small black hole. The first thing we want to do is start working on the material itself. So let me I'm just going to get a content browser over to one side, and that is more for for myself to be able to look in there for some form of guidance on this whole material. So as we're doing this, we're just going to right click and create a new material. We're going to call this M black hole tutorial. Okay. And then we're going to double click this material, and let's bring it over here so we can have a look. The first thing that we'll need to do about this is to ensure that it is set to leave it to surface, set it to translucent, and make it unlit, and also two-sided. And that should give us the right material to be able to do this. The next thing you want to do, one second, is you want to create the material, create the nodes by adding two multiply. So M on the keyboard, left click, and this will add two multiplies within the node. Sorry about that. And then I'm just moving around some materials that is going to help me to put all this together. In this first multiply in here, we want to plug this into the second one like that. And in this one, we want to keep the number 3 on the keyboard pressed, and then left click. This will add a node with a color. Connect that into the A node, the A connector of the multiply, and then change this color to something, maybe like a blue or something like that. That's the default color for our black hole, and we're going to convert this to a parameter and call it black hole, or more like a creation disk color, something like that, right? And then we can also set a group for it in which we're going to name it global settings, right? And then with that done, we can add an intensity here. So let's just keep S on the keyboard pressed and left click. This will add a scalar parameter, and we can call that emission intensity, because we're plugging this into an emission anyway, and we'll just give it a value of, I don't know, maybe like 1 or something like that, right? And then this goes into the emissive color over here. We can also keep A pressed on the keyboard and left click. This will add an add node, and then we can connect that over into our opacity, okay? And then the next thing, we want to connect into this add node a breakout float for components, and we just want the alpha of that, and just put into the A value here, and then over here add in a vector length node, and this one we want to take the V3 and plug it into the add node, and also plug it over into the multiply over here like that as well. Okay, with that done, we want to add a mask, so just type in component mask. Make sure the RGB, are all three of them are being masked, but leave the alpha unticked, and then plug that into the vector 3. We obviously get an error here because we need something to connect it to. And this is the point where a special custom material is going to be needed. And I'm just going to bring the material to my original black hole. And what we've got here is we've got a custom data material. And this has a code, a C++ code, which has been modified by me and other people to make it work and create this material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire code and put it into the YouTube description underneath. You'll find the link, or if it can be allowed as a description, I'll just put it in there. So you copy that entire code and you paste it into the material, and I'll show you how to do that. But one thing you will have to do on your own is add all of these parameters. So I'll show you how to do that first. But the first thing you want to do is Control C on this material. Go into your black hole material. You can Control C and Control V. I can do that because I've got it. But you'll have to just look for custom, and that's it. That's it. Just the custom, right? And what you do to this custom, you go in here. You can rename it to, I'm just going to put example as a name. This is where the code needs to go. So you would take this code that you can copy, and then go into your example, delete that number 1 there, and Control V, and that adds the code within that material. Okay. Now, after you do that, the code is not going to work because you don't have any of these variables. The first thing, you want to change the output type to float 4. And then you want to start adding inputs. Now, if you look at this material, it's got 23 inputs, 24 including 0. So every one of these inputs, when you go over here, you press the plus button, it will add a new input. And then in that input, you can type in the name of it. And it's very important that you type in the name exactly as you're seeing on the screen right now. So that's T chord, for example, for the first one. And then the second one will be C pose, because each of these, this is a texture coordinate, this is a camera position, this is time, and so on. And you want to add all of those. So just make sure that whatever you do, you actually look at this code and you add all of these, but the code itself you can copy, right? After you do that, you plug in the black hole code into this mask, and you also plug it into the float over here. And the next step really for us is to now generate all the parameters that are needed for these variables in order for the material to work. And I'm going to start doing that now one by one. Okay, so for the texture coordinate, we want to bring a make float 2, and the result is going to go into texture coordinate. And in this, we've got an X and a Y, and I'm going to bring in a break out float 2 components. And the R value can go into the X value, but then the green value we want to invert. So we're just going to take 1 minus. 1 minus, essentially, that's what it does. It just inverts the value that you're plugging into it. So if it's 1, it's going to be -1. Okay, and then in here we want to add the screen position, and we take the viewport UV and put it into our float. Now, just imagine this black hole is really dependent on your view, your viewport, your camera. We're going to do things later on that are basically taking that into account, this resolution of your screen. So your black hole always scales alongside the resolution of your screen. Okay, so then we've got the C position, the camera position, and then we will take a vector VS for that, and that goes into the C position. Then we've got the next one, which is camera, the time. So we're going to take in time and plug it in here as well, which is fine. Then the next thing, this, no, I made that wrong. Time needs to go into time. I don't know why I put it in there. So we've got to put time into the time area. Camera vector, I'm going to put it in here, camera vector, because I've actually skipped one by mistake here. I need the camera position VS, and then I'm going to need the actor position as well. So we've got actor and camera position. We're going to subtract the camera position from the actor position. So I'm just going to subtract this, put them both into here and then plug them into the camera position. Okay, and that should fix our camera situation. Okay, now into this value in here, we need to add a black value. So just bring in a a color, plug it in there, and just leave it as black. And you'll not hear from this again. Okay, now we've got the resolution. So for that, we're going to bring not the screen position. We're going to bring the screen resolution and take the visible resolution and just put it in there, and that should fix our resolution problem. Okay. For the next one, we've got quality steps. So scalar, for a scalar parameter, call it quality steps. This will ensure that we get more steps on our texture distortion that we're creating. And I would put a default value of about 56 in there and just apply that. I know the material is going to be an error, but let's just make sure we're not going to lose the work that we've done. Then we've got the C1. Now this is how big is the black hole. So how big is the horizon, right? This is going to be what's going to determine the event horizon. So we can actually, although we're going to do this for the material, by the way, we're going to do all of this for the blueprint set parameters material. We still want to set the material in the right way here as well. So for this particular one, I am going to call this event horizon, something like that. Make it sound dramatic size. And also quality steps, we may want to put this into the global settings, and maybe the event horizon put it into the I don't know, whole settings or something like that, right? Okay, so I don't know, just whatever you think, but we're just gonna put that in there, and I'm gonna give it a default value again of 1 for this. Okay, it's not really that important. RV, we're just gonna name it that way. If we're unsure about how we're going to use something, we're just going to name it as it's being in the code, and then we're just going to plug it in here. And if we need to use this later on, we can rename it to something else. I think that that's quite useful to be able to do something like that. Okay, and then we have this AD here, where this is where we're going to put a creation disk texture. So we want to bring in a texture sample, right click it and convert to texture object. Okay, and this texture you've got already, just type in default, you already got a texture in here that you can use. Just use this one, the default texture, and this, plug it in there, and that will be the texture that we will be stretching later on when we want to play around with the creation disk. I'm just going to bring these nodes upwards so that they're not in the way of the next nodes that are being added. As you can see, we're about halfway through on adding all of this stuff in as well in here. And in here, we want to put a scalar for the radians. I'm just going to leave it at 2. Don't need this actually, we're just gonna leave it over there. The next one is the ring radius. That's pretty important. Let's make sure that we actually name that, and we give it again a value of 1. These are just default values that we're going to change later on when we need to make some adjustments. Okay, then this one, the R width, this is where we distort the texture, right? This is an important one, so you've got to make sure you name it properly. Let's just call it texture stretch, and I would definitely put something like 100 on this, just because you do want to stretch that texture a bit. Okay, now the max root, this, if you play around with this particular setting, it will make your creation disk sort of start creating duplicates of itself around itself. So it's quite an interesting effect if you want to play around with that. But I will leave that one to you guys. In the meantime, I am just going to call it as it is, and if we want to use it, we can use it. These V1 and V2, these are colors for the black hole, but because we are sort of on the back end, we are overwriting that. I'm just gonna put 2 colors here, and maybe like a blue and maybe like a red. I don't know, something like that. And then I'm going to plug them in, and they will be forgotten in here for the time being, because I'm going to get an error in the code if I don't do this. So I'm just going to put those colors in there quite nicely. Now what we've got here is we've got a time value, okay, and then we've got where, you know, the sort of the movement of the ring as well. So what we need is we need a multiply node that we can then connect into our value. Sorry, I need to see that I need to refresh my page. Right, so we've got a time value, we've got a multiply in there. We can bring in the time node yet again and plug that into the A value. But we want to put the speed, we want to multiply the time and the speed. So let's just put ring speed. So this is the rotation speed. We can call it ring rotation speed or something like that, but you know, I'm gonna give it a default value of 0.001. So it just sort of turns quite slowly. I don't need that to turn very quickly. Now I'm gonna also add a divide node in here, and I'm going to buy another scalar parameter. I'm going to call this ring intensity and plug it into the divide, and time again I'm going to plug it into the divide, which can then go into here. Okay, and that should resolve that issue. Another thing to remember is that we've put this into the whole setting. We've got a ring radius here, so we might want to call that disk as a group. The texture is obviously still part of the disk. Max root is part of the disk. Ring speed and ring intensity, again, part of the disk. This is all disk stuff, disk related stuff, right? Okay, and we've got all of that put together. Now we need these two here are two scalars parameters. We are going to name them as they are. This is the intensity of the ring and the radius of the intensity of the ring, so like a fall off. But I'm just gonna put those two with a default value of 1 and 0, and not necessarily gonna play around with those for now. Also, what we do have in here is the strength is determined as a sort of a fall off from. So we're gonna have ring intensity fall off. And this is, I'm just gonna put that in there, and I think a default value of 1 should be fine. This will just sort of stop the ring at the edges. The accretion disk at the edges will the outer edges will be blurred. If you don't put this in, it will, you know, they'll just be sharp, and you don't want that. You want it to fade away, sort of thing, right? Okay, and then the next one, I believe, let me just have a look. So we've got a Doppler intensity ring, which is this threshold. Let me just add a scalar. So we're going to call this Doppler intensity. This is a this ring part here is a disk setting, and the Doppler intensity is a hole setting, and I'm going to put that into the threshold. Okay. Then I'm going to have this RFAC here, again a scalar parameter with, I'm going to call it as it is and just leave a default value of 1. Doppler intensity is good to be left at 0 for now. You only need it if you actually do need it, depending on your Bloom settings. And then the H size is the actual total black hole size. So at that point, add the scalar parameter black hole size, not so's, sorry, not so's. We need size, and we'll leave that a value of, I don't know, let's just leave it at 1. I think it's dangerous to go above. I think you'll just think the black hole isn't working. Okay, so we've got that in there. This is a global parameter, so global setting, and I'm just going to apply, and the material should now be ready. So we're, give or take, we're ready to put this onto a sphere or into a blueprint. So what we'll do now, we'll create a material instance and a blueprint and just quickly test our black hole before moving on to the refraction setting. And what we're gonna do, sorry, I've just literally moved the window. Just gonna take the black hole material out. I'm going to right click in here and create a blueprint class. And I need an actor, and I'm gonna call this BP black hole tutorial. And I can drop into the world if I want to, but also let's double click it, bring it over here. So that's the black hole material. Oh, sorry, that's the original black hole material. I don't need that. I need the I've got my, oh, I've closed it. So there we go. Black hole material. And then the black hole itself. I'm going to, in the content browser, I'm going to right click the black hole material and create a material instance. I'm going to go back into the blueprint. And now I'm going to add a static mesh. And for the static mesh, I'm just going to call this black hole. And over here in the static mesh, search for a sphere, and you should be getting a sphere. I mean, you literally can use any sphere. So I'm going to use this material sphere. It's just a simple sphere. And you can see it within the world, right? Now the material, I will select this instance and drop it in. And you can see now that it's disappeared. Okay, let's compile. We don't need to do anything here. Let's go back into our level and select our black hole. Now, you've got to play around with some settings. What we need first is we need to open the material instance. So I've got it open. I'm just going to drag it over here and make it a bit bigger, okay? And these are all the things that we've sort of set up for in there, you know, with the categories and what they do. Okay, now we can't really see anything, so this is, you know, this is not nice. I am going to just make sure that this preview is very closed up. So one thing that's really important about the black hole is the size of the blueprint itself. So to start off with, to make sure that this is we're in the right direction, let's just move this to 100. So I've just increased the size of the actual sphere to about 100, and now we want to start activating some of these settings in here, you see, and to be able to see what works and what doesn't. So we definitely want to play around with these settings to begin with. We've got a Doppler intensity, but there's nothing to bring that, you know, that effect from. The event horizon size doesn't seem to be doing anything, so you may want to start from a very, very low setting. The black hole size, again, doesn't seem to be doing anything, so I'm not really seeing anything, and this is always the problem. And you see, if I'm going too close, this is then looking okay. So it does look like being closer or further away from the sphere itself does something, but then, you know, it just turns it completely black. So there's clearly something going on in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the event horizon quite small, but then it's the black hole size itself that maybe is too big. So let me just play around with these settings, maybe take this to 0.5. Let me just try and find what works. Okay, so I've put the settings around this point. I've made the blueprint quite large. Now if we enable everything within the world, then the sky was going to affect the way we see it. So, you know, I would definitely get rid of some of this stuff to make sure you got a black scene like this so you can properly see it. And now what we've done here is, you know, the max root, like I've told you, is going to create sort of multiple versions of the creation disk. So I would leave that to a 1 or a 2, but, you know, 5 can go all the, you know, above 5 seems to be starting to create that duplication. The ring intensity in this particular, you can see what it's doing when you play around with it. You know, it just creates a bit of a soup as well, but, you know, you can leave that to 0 if you want. Then you've got the intensity fallout. So as you can see, if you go all the way to 0, then it creates a hard edge. So you want to keep that somewhere maybe around here to be able to mask that. Then you've got the radius, which is very sort of, you know, the importance of this is not, you know, just this value, just leave it around there, because it really depends on the texture that you're using. So, you know, if you put this to 0, for example, it will disappear. If you take it to 1, doesn't show anything. To 2, it's quite small, and 4, 5. So I would say leave it at about 5. You've got the stretch here, which again, depending on the texture, in this particular case, it doesn't work because of the texture. You've got the emission intensity. So this is the intensity of the actual color, as you're seeing in there. I like this really, you know, what do you call it, irradiated coffee color. Then you've got the intensity of the ring color as well, so you know, you can get some more shine if you're using that. I would leave the R factor 1. This intensity slider here, again, you can see that it's just really stretching that texture, making a lot more rings, so you can make something more stylized in this particular way if you want to. So that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Yeah, look at that. Okay, then you've got the R radians there set to 12. Now, I'm not really seeing any changes. If you change it to anything else, I will just leave it at 12. RV, again, nothing. This is a default value of 1. This is where we have our color, so we can change the color to whatever we want. Sorry, that was the Discord thing. I hate it when Discord just creates these very loud noises. Then we've got the quality steps. So if we increase these, it will just get more steps of these, the quality of our black hole. But I would leave it at about 56. The size, as you know, it just increases or decreases the black hole depending on how big the sphere is. Then you've got the Doppler intensity, which is this sort of shine that comes from the event horizon. And then you've got how big can the hole itself get. So, this is what I'm saying, that this black hole can be really nice to look at and really work on multiple different effects with it. It's really powerful stuff, right? Really powerful stuff and really powerful effects. And that's really the lesson on putting together the materials and how to get them to work for this blueprint. If you scale down the blueprint, let's say you go to a scale of 1,000, which is obviously quite low. As you can see, the black hole is bigger than the sphere, so you will then just decrease the size, and that will then be okay. Now it's time to set up the outer, that refraction material, which is quite straightforward. Okay, now when we're just gonna go over and create a new material. M lensing, and I'm gonna right click it and create a material instance. Now I'm gonna open the material itself. Again, with this selected, we want to make sure it's translucent and unlit. Add an add node and here and connect it over into our opacity. Then add in a sky atmosphere light disk luminance, and the reason why I'm doing this is because if I want my light to pass through this properly, then I should be adding this node into the opacity like that. And then over here we want to bring an linear interpolate and drag it into the refraction. Put a value of 1 to 0, and we're going to plug in a multiply into the alpha like that. And I'm going to put in a scalar parameter to call this refraction power and bring that refraction power into the B value. Let me then bring a power node and plug it into the A value. The power nodes, we have to multiply this by 10. Bring in a 1 minus a node as well in here and put it into the base. And we then want to bring a Fresnel or Fresnel or whatever, I'm not really sure how you say it. Leave it at the default value of 0.04, but we want to bring a scalar parameter and call it Fresnel intensity or whatever you want to call it, and put that to a number of 2. This is basically the material. I think if we look here, we should be able to see it. I think so. Maybe not. Anyway, this is the material for the lensing. So if we go back into our over here and we add a new static mesh, and this static mesh we're going to call outer, I don't know, lensing, and then look for a sphere again. Put a material sphere, and then we want to bring that lensing material over. So that's now on top of what we've done before. If we go look back into over here, we're not really seeing anything. I'm gonna go into switch over to unlit mode and going to open my lensing. This lensing material that we've created, so we can now have a look at the level as we play around with these two settings. So as you can see, I am distorting the black hole as I increase these. Now, you're not going to be able to see anything if you go into lit mode, because you do need an environment in order for that effect of distortion to properly show, right? So, but as you can see in unlit mode, it's working, and that's pretty much it for that particular effect. It was very straightforward for that one. Now, what we want to do in our black hole is we want to start being able to change the black hole from here. So when we select the black hole, want to be able to see all the settings in here to be able to change everything that you can do through the material parameter, okay? Well, some of the stuff at least, the important stuff. In order to do that, it's quite simple. We go into the construction script over here, and we want to look for a set set material parameter, set scalar perimeter, set scalar value on materials, and we're looking for the black hole. And as you can see, it's now generated this, and it's already got the black hole in there. We can then connect it to the target, and we want to target a parameter. So I'm just going to make an example here, really. But if you want, for example, to be able to change the black hole size, then that's the name that you want to get. So black hole size. We can actually go into the material itself, find, if I can find it. Yeah, there we go, black hole size, and just copy that. And I'm going to go into my, over here, I'm going to paste it into this none field, where it says none, we're just going to put the black hole size. And now right click this and promote a variable. And we can name that black hole size, okay? And it's a float. Make sure you click the eyeball here so you can actually see that parameter within the Unreal Engine. Now, within the editor. So once we compile, we go back to the level, you can see we have a black hole size slider, and the black hole is gone, and that's because it's set to 0. So if we increase this, the black hole will come back to life, just like that. Okay. Next thing, let's say we want to change the color of the black hole. So we would copy this and then paste it. Okay. And now we want to look into the material, and it's called accretion discolor. If I go into my material in here, there we go, copy that, and then go into the blueprint and paste it in the parameter name, and then here promote a variable, and then call that, I don't know, color, right? Simple. And then compile and go back into, make sure you got the eyeballs ticked, and compile and go back into here. And now we can change the color, but nothing happens. Why is that? Nothing is really changing. So I've done this on purpose because I wanted to show you guys what this means. The reason why this doesn't work is because that color is it's in vector, it's a vector value, a vector node. So if you go in here, you'll want to delete all this stuff, delete the color, and you want to set vector parameter for the black hole. And now, as you can see, the parameter value is a vector, which we can then change to color, okay? And the parameter name is the one that we pasted earlier. And now if we compile, we need to link them together. And now if we compile, we go back into the level, there's no colors anymore. And also I always forget to push the eye drop thingy. And now we've got no color, right? Because it's 0, 0, 0. But if we start adding some colors in, you can now see the color. We're changing the color based on this, and that's really quite nice that you can do that. Obviously you then want to start adding things such as intensity and so on to from the material in here. So everything in here should become one of those should become something in here. So you just keep going with this. And also, by the way, all of these things in here, for example, the black hole size, you could add it into a category. So you could call that global, but then the color could be in the I don't know, details or whatever, something like that. And if you compile and go back into the level, you can see that the black hole size is in a global section and the color is in the details section, which will allow you to play with that around. And you can do the same thing here in this setup. You can add stuff for the outer lensing, literally do the same thing, but instead of the black hole, you want the lensing to be in there. And again, with the name of the parameters and so on. And you just continue doing that. You build it up. You build your entire setup up for every parameter you want to change via the blueprint inside the viewport. And I think that's really powerful and really useful for people to do. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would have to say. I think our tutorial is now done, because we pretty much covered everything there was about this black hole. Just make sure you guys, go on the Discord channel if you want to, or anything like that, if you want to discuss it further. But just continue developing it after this point, because it's a very good starting foundation for better effects to come. So yeah. So that pretty much concludes the tutorial. I hope you guys learned something today. I definitely learned a lot by making this black hole. There's many many talented people out there who have worked together on putting something like this, create this code, and also for me to be able to manipulate it in such a way that it works in the way that I want it. Again, I would like to remind you, you can get the project files off my ArtStation, Gumroad, Patreon if you want to support me there. A huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters right now. They make all this content possible and motivate me to continue making more content for them. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for being, supporters directly to the channel. And yeah, that pretty much concludes it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoy what we've done today, and let me know on the Discord server of all the things that you guys have come up with as you create them. So I'll see you in the next one.